I'm Bill Davis, and on behalf of the entire Office Hours team, I get to say welcome to our daily show, where we answer your tech questions live every day. Let's get right to those questions. Alexander Knight from Port Coquitlam, BC, is our reader today. Alexander, what do we have on tap?
First one this morning is from the QR code Yeshua Bell in Antigua, West Indies. I do live streaming for small events, weddings, conferences, etc. I want to add some lighting to my setup. Any recommendations? A lot of person where I am use the Neewer or GVM LED panels.
Let's start with Courtney Gooden this morning. Courtney?
I'm using one of the Neewer 15-inch light panels here, which works great. But, you know, for going in the field, I don't know if you're going to be doing individual interviews or something in a controlled situation, but for wedding, what you might put in your kit is some bright LED bulbs and China balls. You know, a big 2-foot China ball, you stick a 100-watt LED bulb in there. That's the right color, or a dual color temperature bulb in there. And you can hang it above your talent there and get it you a nice soft look, great for wedding photography. It's very flattering light that comes out of it. And then you can use the panel lights or a more direct light for backlight or a rim light. But those China balls fold flat, fit in your suitcase with the bulb, and so they're easy to travel with.
Let's go to Alex Lindsay. Alex.
Yeah. Courtney hit it there. I think the big soft lighting looks great in weddings. so you're trying to find that, and it oftentimes can be very hard. That's what things like chandeliers do really well, is they distribute that light everywhere. So, but a lot of places don't have those, and so being able to have large soft lights, I think you may find that you might, if China balls are relatively inexpensive, and I think when Courtney's talking about 100 watts. At least for me, it'd be the actual 100 watts of LED, not equivalent, so that you're really getting a bright light that you can put out there. You can get ones that are, I don't know if they're, I know that with the ones that we've gotten in the past that are like Kino Flow kind of lights. Those ones we get like 150 watt versions of those, and we put them inside of pretty large China balls. Now, the thing you want to think about is how you're going to hold them. A lot of them have their own hooks, but you got to figure out if you're going to bring C-stands or try to attach them to things at the venue. This is where walkthroughs are useful to figure out where you might put them. Also think about whether you need lighting that's going to throw a little bit. So you may need things that are, do you need more stage-like lighting, park hands and so on and so forth to throw things further along. And so as you kind of grow your business, I think that's something to also think about. You may have something that's in the back of the audience that has to add a little light to what's going on in the room, and that's going to be something that's going to take a little bit more throw than what you're going to get out of a small 1x1 foot panel.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, I've seen Noah Sargent, who's on the panel every once in a while, with his arsenal, bust out with these Nanlite 720Bs with the projection attachment. And the nice thing about the projection attachment is that it has internal barn doors, so you can throw these things specifically where you want. And then if there's like heads in an audience and you want to not put light on the back of somebody's head, you could internal barn door the bottom to be able to cut that off. Or you could throw patterns in there, little gobos that go inside. And those are a great value. So they're about, $1,899 for one, and you're going to want multiples. And then the projection attachment is here underneath the projection attachments box, and it says $249 for that, and that's what it looks like. And you can see the internal barn doors and the various gobos that you can stick inside with the different patterns. So if you want to color up some light, actually on this one you can't color it. It is just daylight. It isn't. You would have to gel this thing to get the color that you want, but you'll see that often. That's kind of old school to throw some gels on it and then put those little gobos inside to give that like a window look or something like that. I've got a couple of these where I can put different patterns. I still have a bunch of an arsenal of these patterns. So that's something to look at, 720B.
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, Small Rig also has some cob lights like the RC60B, which looks like it's on sale right now, $160 US. So I'm not sure what your budget is, but those ones are definitely going to be quite a bit brighter than some of the smaller panels that we've talked about as well. And plus, you can put whatever modifier you want on there. You can put a softbox, you can add a grid to it. So I think bang for buck for under $200, those Small Rig lights are also pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm just going to toss in the fact that I always thought about my lighting kit in terms of broads, spots, and specials, and then indoor or outdoor. If I know if I have something in all of those categories, I'm going to at least be able to do most of the jobs I get called on. Weddings and events are particular because a lot of times you're inside. The whole thing takes place inside. But particularly with something like weddings, the couple may want you to go outside and do some portraits or something like that. Do a little live stream in the back outdoors if they've got a nice looking venue. So those categories have always worked for me, and I try to make sure that I'm at least competent in all those areas. You need to understand enough about color temperature to know that even if you're indoor and you have window light coming in, it's going to be a different color temperature. So your light should reflect that, and you should be able to adjust as needed. But the broad and spot things, they're two different tools and two different purposes. You need your overall light level big enough to get good exposures, regardless of where anybody in that crowd is. But then when you're down to taking good-looking portraits, that same broad light that lit up everything can be, in some circumstances, kind of flattening, and it makes a shot look like a driver's license photo instead of something that's really pretty. And boy, in event work, particularly if you're doing weddings and things like that, making people look great is your probably number one job. It may be the only time that all this family is together celebrating something like this. So you want to do a really good job for them. Those are my thoughts. Alex, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, Mickey suggested also thinking about rentals. It's a great way to also figure out what you want, is to rent lights that might be in the ballpark of what you're looking for. Jack Cannon said that we are trying to stick to one brand to simplify control surfaces. I'm using Aperture and Amaran branded lights, which work with Sidious Link, or Sidious Link. Sorry, I was a little Harry Potter problem there. So Sidious Link application. So that's another one to think about.
Guy Cochran, you wanted to get back in?
Yeah, and be careful if you do ask somebody else to bring in some lighting that is like a DJ or something like that. We had an issue on a project earlier this year where they brought in all these lights, these Chauvet lights, and they definitely lit up the stage. But then we had to deal with this rolling line that just went across. And so then I had to go into ClearScan and dial in this funky shutter speed to solve it. So they said, yeah, we'll handle the lighting. And they paid these guys a lot of money. They brought in truss and everything, but they're just some Chauvet lights, and they rolled. So make sure that they're video-specific lights. The Aperture, the NAND light, they're going to be a continuous light. They're not going to have any kind of rolls to them, but be aware that these cheap lights that are meant for DJ events can have these pulse waves that you don't see to the naked eye, but the camera will definitely pick it up.
100% agree with Guy on that. I've run across that situations more times than I can tell you, that I bought a light because it was affordable and I turned my camera on it and it just didn't work the way I expected. So test. Good luck. I hope everything works smoothly for you. Next question.
David Brady in New York City, New York. The end of year is fast approaching and I need to pad my corporate spend list. What are some hot items that you'd consider must-haves?
Jason Bache, start us off.
Oh, we love spending your money. David, if you don't have one, Alex turned me on to the Mira 2 chair, and it is truly worth what it costs. Herman Miller, you can get them used or reconditioned, refurbished. A lot of them right after COVID were very inexpensive. I think mine, instead of being $1,200, was maybe $800, and it is completely solid. And I put rollerblade wheels on the bottom so they can roll over just about anything, which is awesome.
Alex Lindsay, your thoughts?
We I'll tell you a story about this. There was a company, I don't think I should say who it is, but their IT department, maybe I talked about this before, their video department in DC, what they did is they kept a spreadsheet, and they would, in order of what they wanted, and they would keep a spreadsheet of hundreds of thousands of dollars of what they wanted at the end of the year, at the end of a quarter. And they constantly updated it. And they updated it like once a week. Like, oh, it'd be really good if we had this. And they'd rank things and they'd put things in and everything else of what they wanted. And then when finance invariably said, hey, we need to clear $414,000 or whatever, they would just scroll down that thing and just send the whole list. And they would literally, they all had alerts. So they said, I didn't hear it, but they said that all the phones go off when finance sends that one request every quarter. And they would just send it in. They would just go down and fill it out to where it's almost perfect, the number that that finance was looking for, but in less than a couple minutes, and send it to them. And that's because I asked the reason this came up is I asked them, how do you guys have all the best stuff? It was like the best stuff everywhere, and there's like, oh, this is how we do that, and make sure that we can just fulfill finance's needs really quickly, because like those guys don't care. They just want to get rid of this and move on, go home for the weekend. So anyway, a couple things that make life a little bit easier, knowing a little bit about what David does. Headphone amps are kind of something that can kind of fill up some spot. I mean, having good headphone amps or good in-ear monitor amps that you can put under tables, that you can attach to things. Behringer makes some. The ones that we used a lot more are Fisher, or a little more expensive. These are Fisher in-ear. You can clip them on, but we also had them. We have mounted those to tables. They're a little bit nicer than those, and so that's something that you can kind of fill in. Think about in-ear monitor support. Other things that we often don't buy when we need to, but things like HyperDecks, routers, those are all things that you go, oh, I can get away with it. But having another, like now that I don't know how much money you have to spend, but now that Blackmagic has bigger routers, life could be a lot easier with 120 by 120. so those are things I think I would think about some of those.
If you need 120 by 120 in your home office, you're doing something.
I think he said corporate spend list. It's not his
I'm
home office.
Kidding.
Yeah, exactly. But 120 and 120 at home. Awesome.
Yeah, something's going on. Guy Cochran.
Yeah, Alex is right. I always have like this little wish list stashed away towards the end of the year just in case this pops up. But yesterday they were talking about the Genelec monitors, so that's on my wish list. I've owned them in the past and really missed the clarity of those. So if you have some inexpensive desktop monitors, look at getting some Genelecs. I'd also look at on the audio side. There's always great microphones that you can pick up from Schoeps, Neumann. If depending on the budget range, you want to have different mics for different purposes. So if you need some wireless, of course there's Axient at the top end, Electrosonics. It just depends on what kind of gigs that you're doing. If you need large diaphragm condensers versus some mics for people walking around. I'd also be looking at the Yamaha DM3 or the DM7 depending on your budget. So an awesome mixer, some Dante stuff if you're using that in your org. There's that new camera that we talked about earlier in the week from Insta360 for conference rooms that has the larger sensor camera in the middle along with the soundbar and 14 microphone beam formation. So that's like $2,000. Netgear switches, 4250s. I'd be looking at a bunch of, those because they have the Dante profile built in. They make life easier. It's nice to have the small one. I keep one of those packed so I could pack it around. But then it's nice to have the full size ones with PoE. I've got it running 3 PTZ optics right here. Stream Decks, they're on sale right now, 32 buttons for $189. So they're normally like $299. So if they're still on Amazon, they were yesterday, pick up a couple of those. And then a prompter, a good 17-inch prompter if you're doing a lot of meetings. Something like the Ivy over here where you can have all in one, the webcam with the speaker with the audio. And that's nice if you have people, colleagues across the country and you want to feel like you're there. I mean, I'm talking to these things for hours and it's nice to feel like I have this device from the future where I can talk to people from across the world and feel like they're in my face because I'm talking to them through a teleprompter. So I'd look at a teleprompter as well. Oh yeah, and then computers. Man, I just upgraded a church over yesterday. M4, look at the M4. The difference is dramatic on I upgraded them from an Intel, and it was just dramatic how much of it smooth improvement, lower processor load for the stream going out. So if you have the money, I mean, even this was just an iMac M4 top of the line model, $1,899, and man, what a sweet machine. So, and the display on it's ridiculous too for what you get for the money. So. Look at the M4s.
We have tons of suggestions there. And in the Mukana chat, where we heard things like Mickey McIntyre said more drives or NASA's, a master carton of gaff tape. That'll last you at least a couple of months. And Nigel said, the donation to office hours. It makes a great holiday gift. And so we would all appreciate anything you can do in terms of supporting our efforts here at Office Hours. Let's see. Jason wanted to get back in on this before we finish. Jason?
Yeah. Some of the best money that I spent this year, and I don't use them on the show because this is a quad driver, which means it's a little bit too big. As you can see, it sticks out of my profile. But I ended up getting my ears measured for custom IEMs, and they were adapted. These are Sennheiser, Shure SE 840 somethings. They're too high profile, but when I'm not on the air, This is truly the best sound I've ever heard, ever. I cannot say that more clearly. It's just incredible. I have very expensive headphones. I use these. To me, they are more comfortable. And they sound better. So pretty good.
There you go. Alex, you want to get back in?
Yeah, Mickey also suggested Sound Devices A20s. Remember that Sound Devices, if you were doing events, Sound Devices also has a new handheld mic. So this is the new A20HH, their handheld. So this fits into the Nexus lines, except that it's handheld instead of a pack. So that's another thing to think about. Also, Studio Technologies. There's lots of, if you're doing events, there's lots of consoles that all fit into Dante, do other things. Keep those in the back of your head. I have owned many of them. Right now I have the 205 here, and they really make, if you're just trying to make things work, they make things a lot easier.
And don't forget, your questions drive this show. If you'd like to put a question in, you can use the QR code that has now appeared in the corner of that. Shoot it with your phone or your iPad or anything else that reads QR codes, and pop a question in. It'll get voted on, and then we'll go on to your question, hopefully. Next question.
Paul Vahus in Austin, Texas. We had a great talk about Keynote the other day on Office Hours. Would it be more worthwhile to invest time learning BM, Cam, or Kino?
Alex, what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think that for most people, I think Kino is going to be enough for what they want to do. But if you really want to geek out and be able to take full advantage of everything that the camera does, I think that the Blackmagic camera is probably something to pay a lot of attention to. It just opens up almost everything, except I don't know if it does spatial yet, but almost everything else it is able to capture. It's just an incredible app. So I have Kino. I bought Kino, so I have it. I play with it, but I often find myself going, "Oh, I don't have this little thing that I needed." But I would say that for 95% of what you want to do, Kino is going to be a great solution. If you really want to kind of make sure that you have full access to every bell and whistle that you can get out of the camera, you may want to look at the Blackmagic camera.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is asking, would there be any macOS graphical HTML5 editors to build sequences for SPX?
And Courtney Gooden's going to start us off. Courtney?
I'm not sure what your purpose is. If you're just going to create two-dimensional graphics, is it going to be for a web page, but for special effects? Is that what you're talking about? If you want to just do
SPX, that's what the graphics engine that we use for lower thirds and questions and anything else any graphics that you want to fly in.
On-screen supers, essentially.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll suggest something else that you can also use for that, which is After Effects. It's been used for years for creating motion graphics that go on the screen. Of course, if you have an Adobe subscription, it's right there to create motion graphics, and they're much more precise. And this is what they use, what we use all the time in television shows for creating motion graphics that are used on flat screens, 2D graphics that are used. Even to emulate web pages, nobody ever wants to work in HTML5 because of the limitations of HTML, of having to run it in a browser. And you want it to be able to just run as a freestanding graphic without having to have that browser interface or engine running to play it back. So I'd suggest more along the lines of After Effects to create it, and then it can be played back just as a video file to create your motion graphics for SPX.
Jason Beisch.
I've always used an app called Loopic, LOOPIC.io. It is purpose-built for this kind of thing, and they're not kidding. It really is code-free. It's beautiful. It looks like they're going subscription, which really upsets me, but looks like it doesn't start until January 10th, so I don't know. Maybe you can get in under the wire. I'm not sure. I don't pay a subscription for it, but it is a phenomenal piece of software.
Let's go to our next question.
This one's from Mikhail Patira in Warsaw. I'm looking for a monitor, both for streaming as a multiview and acting as a view for the director in the field. Is it possible to power the Blackmagic SmartView using VLOCK, or maybe there are better solutions?
Alex Lindsay, what do you think?
So what you can do is there's lots of different ways to power your a Blackmagic monitor. I guess you're talking about the SmartView, which is the larger SmartView monitor. And in that case, you're going to need, I think, AC power. I believe that if you're talking about the full-size SmartView monitor, you're talking about AC. And so that's going to need a lot more power. But if you're talking about any of the field monitors that you have there, that might be something that's more up your speed. But I'll let Guy jump in. Maybe he's got a better solution.
Guy?
All right, you ready? It's kind of big.
No.
So it's got an IEC connector on the back of the SmartView, so you're going to need some AC power to power that thing. So a cart and a big battery would be the way to go on that.
That all makes sense. By the way, I wanted to say, one of the things that somebody told me early in my career, which has really stuck with me, is that there are directors and then there are directors. There are different kinds of directors. Some directors really concentrate on directing people. They want to work with the actors in the scene to make it right, and they're going to leave the technical stuff to everybody else. There are other directors who are very technical, and they want to be able to judge color and sound quality and everything else as the scenes are unfolding. So I would say that you got to know who your director is and what they are interested in most. If they are not technically astute, and that's not where they want to focus. They want to focus on the relationship stuff and the people and the acting, then they're probably not going to need the best quality visual monitor. I mean, you're still going to give them something good because they're responsible for everything on set, but just know that if there's something a little out of color balance, they probably won't focus on that. They're going to assume that the post-production crew is going to take care of those kind of things. They want the relationship stuff, the people, the acting to be precise. And then again, there's that other, if you're doing something with Bruckheimer or somebody else who's got things exploding everywhere, they may be far more technically oriented than people oriented. So I just say know your director and figure out what that person needs. And your job is to give them exactly what they want. Next question.
Next question is from Courtney Gooden here on the panel from Hollywood, California. Has anyone seen the new announced Google Veo 2 text-to-video AI?
Courtney Gooden, have you seen this?
I saw some videos.
Courtney throwing a Cochrane. I didn't realize it.
Cochrane, yeah, and with Cochrane here.
I know. I needed to. For those of you who may not know the show parlance, throwing a Cochrane is putting a question in that elicits information that you think is important for the audience to see, but you're sending it to yourself. So Courtney has done that today. Go for it.
So I saw this. This came up in my YouTube stream the other day, but they just announced this, and I think they released it. It is available now. Veo 2 is a text-to-video like Sora, which has just recently been released, but this beats Sora all over the place. It's very coherent, as you can see from some of these samples here, that it's extremely realistic. The dog, all the physics are right with the dog and the flapping ears here. It can generate a Pixar-style animation with the hair is right. These flamingos look perfect. You can create up to 4K with realistic motion, and they have a variety of different models to use with advanced color. You can see that this looks, you'd be very hard pressed to realize that was an AI generated image. That person isn't real. Neither is this camera shot. And you can see samples on their website of this, like pouring liquids. The physics behavior is perfect in its generation. It doesn't really get too confused on running animals, things like that the other Sora has big problems with. This guy here in the beekeeper looks completely realistic. Even the animated bees that are swarming around him are amazing. And you can see even vehicles at night, it gets lens flare right. Sliding vehicle is coherent. The wheels are coherent. Look like they're actually contacting the road here. So, that's, I think Google has definitely one-upped OpenAI here in their text-to-video. I don't know what the pricing plan is for it. It's available free to test, I believe, now. So sign up for the test.
Alex Lindsay, what do you think?
I think you sign up for the wait list is what Google's offering. I've already signed up for it. It looks really impressive. I think it's going to revolutionize ads for Lipitor. So I think that it's all those goofy ads of people standing there smiling. This is going to crush that. If you're doing ads for pharmaceuticals, you're done. You should find another job because this is going to be that. All those impressionistic things. I think a lot of people keep on saying it's going to take over Hollywood, and I may have to eat eat crow at some point. But I just feel like, when we work with directors, they're so specific about what they want that, I think maybe for some establishing shots or for some wider shots, you might get there. I don't see us making whole movies, that people actually want to go see anytime soon with these. But I do think that the technology is getting to be pretty amazing. And I think that, again, for ads where you're trying, if you're doing B-roll, for your corporate thing, if you're even possibly B-roll for TV or film, but I'm just saying, if you're in the pharmaceutical ad business, you should find another job, because those kind of useless, no story, just kind of impressionistic videos, it's like stock photography. This is going to crush that, pretty quickly.
Courtney, but can it replace the announcer guy that's like Lipitor side effects?
Oh yeah, that's done. It can already do that. Especially the one that talks really fast. This is going to kill you. It's going to kill you. It's going to kill you very quickly.
Make you want to die. Yes.
But a certain percentage of people, like half, are going to actually not be able to walk in 10 years. And so,
cause experiment eats the ball off.
Yeah, exactly.
Pat Machida, wherever your spirit is, you're gone.
One thing I did want to point out is these demo videos that are on their website. If you look at the prompts, which they show the prompts here for them, here's the prompts, like this a flamingo. Look at the length of this prompt here. That's how detailed you have to get in the prompt, I guess, to achieve something like this. Each of the prompts.
Yes and no. I will say, as someone who does a lot of prompting, that you can build a complex prompt. There's two different ways to do it. If you are trying to get something specific, you'll write a really long prompt. But I find that you can sometimes get more if you allow the AI to kind of do its thing. If you're not trying to get something very, very specific, if you're trying to get a look and you're trying to get something general, giving it a simpler prompt and then evolving it. Now, I don't know how this evolve works. In Midjourney, you go, I like this, I like this, I like this, I like this. And I'll build thousands of images inside of, 20 minutes. And then just pick the things that I want. It works more like evolution than top-down building. And you get
Alex,
things that look incredible.
I'm curious if a room full of 20 of your friends added the same exact prompt into the system, they all get something. And are they wildly different to the point where?
It depends on how
specific the prompt is.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm just wondering whether I'm always interested in controllability with these things as someone who's
it's a different random seed. So if I literally will put in I'll put a prompt into something like Midjourney, and I'll hit go, and I set it up with a pretty high level of variance and pretty high level of chaos, and it'll create something, and then I'll go, oh, I like the direction you're going, and then I'll hit the just use the same prompt again with the same settings. I'll hit that like 10 times, and I'll get 40 different images, and then I start to work. I start to okay, now I'm going to start doing this and this and this and then this, but I'll produce like 40 images of this from the same prompt and the same settings, and then pick the ones that I want. And
I think what I'm heading toward though is, do you think there will come a time when the prompt to result ratio is close enough where you could do, for example, a campaign with the same characters?
Now. So what you do is you can take things and make them. You say, I want this to be. You can by copying that seed. Like if you have a person that you like once you've gotten that down, there's a variety. There's a new thing called patchwork that Midjourney has, and Leonardo has a different one where you can build the same person doing different things, and it will definitely look like the same person doing different things. So
you can also upload of an image that it can use.
Right, you can upload an image, but it'll also there's ways to have it so it really tries to hit that person right on again. And that stuff has been around for about a year. I feel like it's been around forever. It's been here for a year. We've been able to do that. So.
Yeah, no. What I'm interested in is the code then for that character that it generated for you in your first piece of this campaign. Is that something you can protect, or can somebody grab that code out of the thing, and can they then recreate your characters in their ads?
Yeah, they don't even need the code. They would just grab your image, and what you do is you grab the image and put it into Midjourney and say, use this as your example for what I want it to look like as a person reference. So if I have if I want to do a person, I grab 30 about 30, like 4 of them, throw them into Midjourney and say each one of these is a person reference, is a personality reference or whatever, character reference. And it will then try to build something. Now, it doesn't always nail it, but it does a pretty good. The more images you give it, the better it gets. Especially if they're all taken at the same time.
So one of the threads of this is that intellectual property is going to have to change radically in order to protect people's IP in this era where almost anybody can clone almost anything that's on the screen.
I think the concept of intellectual property is kind of becoming kind of an old media process because when you look at the people who are making stuff for YouTube, when you look at people making stuff for TikTok, when you look at the social media there, corporate video and so on and so forth, they just don't care. They don't care about what I mean by intellectual property. They're not trying to protect their own. If someone else, when we're in a world where you're using stock photography, you're using things that you can find, it doesn't, owning that moment doesn't matter. People who sell IP, like, the film industry and the radio industry, whatever, they care about protecting their IP, and it'll be very hard for them to protect their own IP if they're using AI. That's the problem that they have, is that it's now, the question is if you start adding things to it, like if you use a synthesizer, you're not making every note, but you are, the machine's making the note, but you are driving it. I think there's an argument that you're doing that with AI, but I also think that you have to remember that YouTube is all roads are leading to YouTube right now. And if you look at, they're the kind of that when they, it's always funny when someone talks about the streamers and they leave YouTube out because like a quarter of the viewership. But when you're making videos for YouTube, do you care about whether that image is protected? And a lot of YouTubers, especially TikTokers, I mean, they put stuff up so that people will copy it. Like people put things on TikTok not only expecting, but hoping people will use it as the basis of something else. And so the thing is that the concept of in the next generation of media, the concept of IP may just be a very different thing. It doesn't mean that nobody's going to pay attention to it, but I don't know if it's going to have the same weight. You hear Hollywood people talk about all the time protecting their IP, but you don't hear that from, like when someone's building corporate videos, they're not trying to figure out how they just needed an image to tell the story that they want to tell. And whether it gets used somewhere else doesn't mean anything to them, because no one's going to, and same thing with education. If I want to put things in education or examples or my PowerPoint presentations or on YouTube, the ownership of that IP is not important to me for that kind of creation. And that's, it's a invisible part of the market, but that's like 80% of content is created for those avenues, not for Hollywood. And so Hollywood's still worried about it, but everybody else is kind of moving on.
It's going to be interesting to see in generations whether we have these sustainable careers with people who are known for something, or whether that's going to disappear, because once your thing, whatever you created, gets out there, then everybody kind of owns it.
I think it's more about your community. So it's about you building a relationship with people around you. It's not going to be about what you created. Yeah, the creation it's always been that way. Content has never been king. Community is king, and content is just the honeypot. It just brings people to, people who go to see Ariana Grande are into Ariana Grande. I mean, the music brought them there. Or people who go to see AC/DC or Metallica, that's their tribe that they get to go to the concert with and sing with. And that's what it's part of being with everybody else that's into that. But it's the content brought them there. But what gets them to buy the next album and everything else is their connection to the artist. I think that we just people have to keep on thinking about how they're building communities, because that's going to be far more valuable than content.
And interesting discussion.
Bringing us back to Veo 2 for a second, if I might. The one thing about this particular renderer is, and those long prompts that I mentioned that describe, like the cockapoo's fur, they describe how it, the color of it, how it moves in the wind. Most of the text-to-video generators, if you give them a big, long, complex description of a lot of stuff in the shot, it'll get maybe one or two of the 12 things you've listed in, but not a lot. And this one shows a great adherence to the prompt and includes basically all the details that you put into that prompt, whereas a lot of the other video generators, they'll get to, if you ask for, a pink and gray elephant wandering on a field of grass with, in the background, there's a group of deer. And, you might get the elephant, but you may not get the deer. And but this one adheres a great deal. And that's why they're writing these really complex prompts to show you that every detail in that prompt is showing up in the video.
It's been a fascinating discussion. Thank you for bringing it up and throwing the Cochrane, Courtney. We appreciate it this morning. By the way, if you have not been in the back end of the office hours system, we invite you to do that. Go to officehours.global, follow the prompts /join. And one of the things that will allow you to do is get into Makana. That's our back end where the constant chat happens every day during the live show. People trade ideas and things like that. So dive into that if you want to become a little closer to what we do in the show every day. Let's go to our next question.
This one's from Paul Vahus in Austin, Texas. What's a basic mic holder, low cost, that will clamp onto the front of your desk?
Jason Beish, what do you think?
Bad form, Paul. I'm sure you meant at very least the back of your desk because you're going to hear every little rumble. The low profile from Elgato is decent. I want to say this was $75 or so. If you want to spend considerably more money, this is the one that I'm using is OC White, I think, is the company. This is the Ultima, but that is not low cost.
Yeah, though they're a pretty high end thing. There's lots of other ones. Maybe Alexander knows a few of them.
Yeah, you can find them on Amazon for like $20, but I'll echo what Jason said. I would not recommend that. There's just too many vibrations that can happen, too much risk of you, just even the lightest vibration of you bring your hand down onto the desk and that going through the microphone and into your signal chain. So I would not do that. The Elgato is okay. I own a few of those. I also really quite like the newer low profile mic arms. I think those are somewhere between the Elgato and the much more expensive OC Whites. They have a very strong gas spring system in there, and they don't have the ball head that the Elgato has, which I find isn't very strong for really heavy microphones. So I would look at the newer. It's around the same price as the Elgato, and it's actually quite a bit more sturdy.
Alex?
Yeah, Mickey recommends the OnStage MSA 2700. And he said, though I think Paul would need 29 of them to hold all the SM58s. So you can find that at OnStage multi-mic holder.
And remember, each mic has a different profile in terms of self-noise and handling noise. They spend a lot of money in some of the nicer mics and putting internal shock mounting in there. So do a search under shock mount, and you'll see all sorts of rigs for trying to decouple it from swimsuit material desk pads to very sophisticated baskets like I have around the Neumann. Neumann does this with elastic bands that I have to replace about every 7 or 8 years. That keeps the mic pretty much isolated from anything that happens around it. Next question.
Alex 4D Golner in London, UK. Avid Technology was bought by STG a little over a year ago. Have you noticed changes in Avid that might have been facilitated by being owned by a private equity firm?
Alexander Knight, what do you think?
No. Not really.
I know there was a lot of discussion and a lot of anxiety, frankly, when Avid got sold, because so many at the high end of this business have relied on Avid for a long time as one of the premier vendors of nonlinear editing technology and lots of other things, particularly the stuff that they do in the audio space. It's just, I haven't heard anybody going, wow, this was a huge win, or wow, we can't use our stuff anymore. On either ends of that spectrum, I haven't heard a lot of discussion. So I think jury is still out exactly like it was a year ago. That's my opinion. Next question.
Mickey said no, not yet, at least.
Yeah, not yet at least. That's kind of what everybody I'm hearing is saying the same thing. It hasn't been a disaster or a big win. We're all still waiting to see what happens. Next question.
Robin Kutcha in Atlanta, Georgia. I'd like to feed the webcam video/audio from a Mac over NDI. Best software to use.
Guy Cochran has some suggestions for you.
Yeah, it depends on what you want to do. You could do it with an iPad with this little app called USB Camera to NDI. I went to go try it on my Mac Mini M4, and it does say in this small little print here, not verified to work for macOS. And they're right, because when you launch it, it just crashes and says it unexpectedly quit. So I'm not going to recommend that one unless you are using it on the iPad, which I bought it, and it works great on the iPad. So there's also Wirecast. There's also Mimo Live, and OBS will do it on the Mac, but I would not recommend it. So your software choices are really down to Mimo Live and Wirecast. The other option that I have is this thing called the Zowie Box. It's like $179 on Amazon, and what it does is it allows you to do exactly that. Take a UVC camera, and in hardware, it's a little I don't have one right here. It will convert that over to NDI and pop up. Just be aware that that is going to be NDI HX and not full NDI, whereas the software Mimo Live and Wirecast will kick it out as full NDI.
Next question.
This one's from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. I want to use my Wacom and telestrator inside of Keynote as I'm recording the presentation in there. What is the best workflow the panel recommends to achieve this?
Alex, start us off.
Yeah, I don't know if you can use the iPad inside of Keynote. Of course, you can draw in Keynote with an iPad and a pencil. If you're looking for a telestrator, the way that I do that is, of course, as you know, I have a telestrator here. The way I do my records and also the way I present my presentations is actually with my telestrator and another machine that is my presentation. So what I have is a stack of machines here, a stack of Mac Minis. So I have an extreme ISO, and then I have a couple of one of my monitors from my studio go into it, but then I have a application monitor, a web browser monitor, a mini and a presentation mini, and then I have my Stream Deck. I have a small Stream Deck that runs the presentation, goes forward and back, as I'm working on it. And so what that allows me to do is that I can jump with the switcher between a application that I might want to show you, a web page that I might want to show you. Because we do stuff with web pages, so we jump to that, jump to an application, jump to my presentation, and underneath all of that, or over top of all of that, I can use my telestrator. So I can draw over myself, I can draw over the presentation, and you may find that I know that I'm giving you a lot more than what you're looking for there, but it is if you're looking for something that really takes presentations to another level, that's what I do. And then I take the HDMI out, or I just run it into QuickTime from the Extreme, and I can record it there. But I can then record these as separate pieces. It's not quite as easy as using the built-in tools. But again, I don't know if the built-in telestration tool works on the Mac, because I've never done that. I've only done it with the iPad, which I have used in presentations. But this is the method that I use. Is probably it's taken me kind of years to get to a point where it works smoothly. But once you get it working, it's really hard to go back. Like one of the reasons I don't present at events anymore is because I'm kind of like, I can come in over Zoom because I always try to explain to them, I don't think you understand what I have at home. Like I can't use your little Extron and try to run the kind of presentation that I'm used to. So,
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, we spent years developing something called the One Button Studio, and we would sell it for over $17,000. And underneath the hood of that was Mimo Live. And the trick to it is you go in and you do the optional painter layer. So it's the painter layer / telestrator. You add this plug on into Mimo Live, and you set the document to 60 frames per second. And when you're drawing on that Wacom, it'll be completely smooth. So that's what we wound up using. It's you can do a screen capture of the Keynote, suck it into a Mimo Live document. Then you could write over the top of it, and you'll see it on the Wacom. And then you can record right there. You don't even need to kick it out to an external recorder unless you want to. But that's how we were doing it. And we sold those to a lot of libraries and universities, and they're still being used to this day. And it's an incredibly impressive and stable method of doing what you want to do there.
Alex, you wanted to follow up?
Yeah, and Mike Edwards said, I really want to record and use the telestration at the same time. And again, I would highly recommend that you're going to think about breaking this up, whether you're using Mimo Live or whether you're using a switcher with the stuff all coming together. I will tell you that if you get into the hardware route that I've taken on mine, it's super addicting. Like if you're willing to spend the money on it, once you start doing this, it is like you can't go back. Like it is so superior. Once you have hardware and multiple computers, they take a little bit of time for you to figure out how to make it work. And if you ask a question, I can explain my system a little bit more detailed. But you can't go back to presenting the way that people have been presenting for the last 20 or 30 years. Like it's just like you're just in a different world.
Next question.
Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I've had difficulty getting the processed output of a Rodecaster Duo to go out directly into a Sony audio handle. Suggestions for debugging.
Alexander Knight, can you figure out?
I was just asking Francis in the chat about what exactly was happening, and apparently either no signal or low signal is what is happening here. So what you're going to want to make sure you're doing is that on the Sony XLR interface, make sure that you do have it set to line level, not mic level. Make sure you're using 1/4-inch TRS balanced interconnect cables. You can tell by looking at the end of the connector, there should be 2 rings on the end of that connector. The other thing you're going to want to do is make sure you go into your routing on your Rodecaster, because it's probably also the routing settings. And what you're going to want to do is, and you can do this either on the console or use Rode Central, you're going to want to go into your output routing section and do a custom mix. And that way you can create a custom mix of what exactly you want to go out to there. And there should be a setting to have it be pre or post processing as well. So it's probably in the mix settings. You can also verify, if you go to Rode's help knowledge base, they have a document that explains with screenshots of how to create a submix on your Rodecaster that should address it. And if you have any other questions, you can always jump into Discord.
What confused me when I read this was Sony audio handle. I don't know why, but that brought up like a plug-on transmitter. Is that what he's talking about? Or did you talk to him about what the destination for the output is?
I believe it's just the Sony XLR handle. It's plugs into the hot shoe on the camera.
Ah, okay. Some subsystem of the camera itself. Okay. Courtney, thoughts?
Yeah, I think Alexander hit it on the nose here. The handle looks like this, and it has 2 XLR ends. And you got to make sure that you're setting this to line input, and you're turning off any phantom power that may be on there. So you want to turn that off. And then you have, the sub gain controls and the main gain control there you can adjust. And on your Rode Central or on your Rodecaster Duo, make sure you're coming out of the speaker outs, the left and right here, which are TRS for each individual output. They are balanced out, I believe. And so make sure that TRS to XLR cable that you're using to go into your Sony is wired correctly. And as was said by Alexander, the Rode Central, go in there and make sure that the routing and any effects you're adding or compression or any of the fancy effects that they have in there, effects are applied to the output, and make sure that output is post effects.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, usually when you plug something into and it sounds really low or not there, it's usually you have a mic output going to a line input. So, and so the mic input is mic output is 40 dB too low, typically, and so that would sound like it's almost not there or it's very, very low. So when you talk about that being the thing, it does sound like that's a mismatch. I don't know how that would mismatch in this environment, but if it only has, and Mickey said that the Rodecaster only has line level outputs, it's a little confusing. I will say, Francis, I think you're outgrowing, for what you're trying to do, you're outgrowing the Rodecaster. Like the Rodecaster is a single mixer that's really good for a podcaster to do this. You're trying to integrate it into this is a really, it's a really good Acura, but you should probably not pull the Winnebago with it. So I think that the Rodecaster Duo is really good. I just think that I can see where you're going with this, and I think that it's probably underpowered or underfeatured you're really moving more towards needing a professional mixer. And I think that the Rodecaster is designed for something that is a little short of what you're trying to make it. When you start finding yourself in this weird, like, I'm going to go through the camera and I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to put this up, you just need to know that you're now, when you start doing weird things with wiring, there's probably a way to do that without the weird things. And it may require some investment in rewiring, but there's probably a proper way to start making all of this stuff work. And I think that you're probably very quickly reaching that precipice.
Just want to let you know, Alex, I now want a T-shirt that says, "It's a really nice Acura, but you probably shouldn't tow a Winnebago with it." words to live by.
I was going to say Chevette, but a Rodecaster Pro is a great.
Yeah, it's a fine automobile.
It's not like a Chevette. It's like an Acura.
Designed to do that.
But you can't. But you're starting to like hook onto a trailer onto it. You're like, I don't think you should do that. The frame's not built for that.
Next question.
Alex 40 Goldner is back from London, UK, thinking about the future of video codecs. Apart from more resolution and higher frame rates, what would you hope will come to codecs in the next 5 to 10 years?
Ooh, Jason Bass. Prognosticate, dude.
Oh, of course. I would love to see an entire workflow come to be that is for spatial video, for capturing and editing and being able to look on set and on stage and then color grade and just the whole 9 yards for 180-degree high frame rate, basically what I want to be using my Vision Pro to consume. But I want to see that come into a codec that is ludicrously responsive and also, all of the great things, but as fast as it possibly can be.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, purpose-designed FPGAs to handle this in hardware so that they get very high quality compression and at a lowest, achievable bit rate with very little latency. So the speed of the codec is important if you're going to be live streaming. And the quality, because the longer you take to encode something, the better the quality of the encode. And the longer you take to decode, but it increases latency. So I think the newer codecs, the codecs that are built in, the new Insta360 8K has a new codec in it, which looks very good, that stitches together those warped videos, into a 360 image, and then you pull out and de-warp that image in post-production. That codec looks really pretty sharp. There's a lot of sharpening that goes on in it, but it's a fairly high bit rate. But, the better the codec, the lower the bit rate and the higher the quality. But those are the goals you try and achieve with a codec for streaming these days is low bit rate, high quality, which are usually antithetical.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, as Courtney said, hardware solutions, and we're starting to see it. So 7 months ago, Apple announced that the M4s have AV1 decoding on board in the chip. And now at LiveCon, YouTube just announced a beta program. So a few of us that are content creators have access to AV1 things that aren't available to the public. I'll put the URL so you guys can actually watch this video because it does talk about HDR pipelines and how they're segmented in these different workflows. It's exciting. I mean, it's happening now. It's not 5 to 10 years. I mean, in 5 to 10 years, sure, it'd be nice to have HDR, higher frame rates, 120 frames per second, as well as maybe even uncompressed, kind of like what Red's doing, where we're able to take this super high quality, almost raw or totally raw footage and just cram it down, 8K, 16K, whatever the future is, and then immersive. So it's exciting, but AV1 is available for $200 on a card. So if you have a 4000 series NVIDIA, you could encode AV1 on a GPU. If you have an Intel Arc card, which I think the 380 is like $200. So you can already now get up and going as far as an encode, as far as a decode, it's built into the M4. So there you go.
Yeah, you say 5 to 10 years. I'm not even going to prognosticate out that far because I've run across just in the last 5 years so many changes in encoding and decoding and automation of the same. That's kind of in the back of my mind where this is going to go. I think we're going to get to a point where there's so much available AI online all the time that if a system sees a codec, just automatically transcodes it to the best possible solution based on what you tell it to do. And I say that because I famously told the story back when the pandemic first hit. We had been doing all those bespoke codes for all the TV stations, and I just said, anybody who wants to run this ad, here's my Vimeo account. I put a high res up there, just grab it. And sure enough, I think 11 out of the 12 time buy people made it work. And it got on and it looked great. And that day I sat down, I said, why have I spent these hours and hours and hours bespoke transcoding for everyone when now there's a service and now everybody has suddenly figured out they need to get the ad on the air, so they're going to figure it out and do it. I laugh because now 5 years later, my last distribution to stations, I had the same thing happen. 11 out of the 12 placements went perfectly. The one that didn't was not the one that traditionally didn't. Disney used to be not Disney, NBC, bespoke operation directly to NBC, didn't work for a long time. They suddenly figured it out, but now Hulu, a subset of Disney, couldn't figure it out. And so it was like, come on, guys. It's not that hard. 11 out of the 12 placements are doing this just fine, and for some reason, you're not. I want transcoding and all of this mess to go away, and I want some of the smart people out there to figure out how to do it automatically. Alex?
Yeah, I think that we're going to see, as far as codecs go, what's crazy is some of the stuff already existed inside of QuickTime, and Steve Jobs had it pulled out in the aughts, 2005 to 2008, and so they just want to go straight to video. So being able to have multiple layers of graphics, multiple layers of interactive elements, 3D elements, all of those things were in QuickTime, 20 years ago. And we actually we built tools against those where you could select a shirt or select a thing. And we had all these mats that were in front of all of those things. And so I think from a video perspective, I think 120 frames per second 8K is the high. We don't need to go any higher than that from a flat video. When you talk about immersive, you're probably looking at 12K 120 frames a second. 12K per eye 120 frames a second is probably the high watermark for a while. It could get up to as much as 16K per eye at 120 frames a second. I don't think we'll go over 120 for a while because the benefits are pretty low after that. But the other thing you have to think about in codecs is all the metadata, as Bill was talking about a little bit. But metadata is going to be important. Like, for instance, if I send values to if I have immersive data and I send you the values, I need to know what the interaxial distance is, but I also need to know what your interocular distance is, and I have to be able to create something that matches those two together. And so all that metadata and being able to process metadata is going to be really important.
Next question.
This one's from the QR code Steve Uroff in Madison, Wisconsin. Computer HDMI input to an ATEM Mini turns many shades of light gray into white and crushes dark grays into black. Who makes an affordable video switcher that doesn't have this problem?
Alexander, do you want to take on this one?
So there's at least on macOS, I know there's a bit of a workaround because I've run into this too. I don't know what exact ATEM Mini you have, but the Roland V1 HD Plus is the only one that I know of that has really accurate colors and doesn't have this crush issue. For ATEM switchers, usually if I'm putting a computer into it over HDMI, if you're on a Mac, if you go into your display color profiles, change the default color profile, which defaults to BMD HDMI. There's two color profiles, Adobe RGB, and another one, there's a SMPTE DCI P3 color space that does look considerably better. So if you change that, you should see a noticeable improvement.
Guy Cochran.
Stole my answer, Alexander. And just make sure also that you're plugging into the correct HDMI port. Some of them, definitely input 1 has a different color space. So double check if you're on they reserve it for low latency gaming. So try going over to number 3 or 4 if you're on an ATEM Mini Pro or ATEM Extreme ISO. On a regular Mini, it's definitely number 1. And then if you just want to go out of the Blackmagic ecosystem, this one's been very popular. The Go Stream deck by OC is another one to take a look at that won't have that problem. So you could jump in their forums. I'm on their Facebook forums, and it's a popular switcher as an alternative to a Blackmagic designs small, sub $300 switcher.
Let's see if we can squeeze in one more question before we're out of time.
All right, this one's from James Fossley in Minneapolis from the QR code. Have my first iPhone with lidar. How do you scan spaces? Are there best practices for accuracy?
Jason.
So I think the best way to do this is if you picture it like kind of an upside-down wedding cake. Spaces are a little bit different because you're not scanning a specific thing in the middle. But if for example, this is a side yard of a client of mine, and it's perfectly accurate. He used it to calculate exactly how much dirt he needed to build up a certain hill at a certain place. You end up getting a pretty good set of practices, and I think of it kind of like painting back and forth. This one is made from simple iPhone LiDAR. The next one is kind of a bit of a lie. This one is not, but the process is relatively the same.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that. Well, that one's Jason's is a little bit. That's 240 photos that I shot in India to get that there. So that's a much more complicated approach. But Polycam is what a lot of us use when we're using our phones. So and it is a pretty straightforward thing. So there's two modes in Polycam. One is going to grab geometry, and the other one is just going to use, I guess, AI or algorithms, whatever they want to call it, to start just figuring out. I know where the walls are. I know where the roof is. I know where all the major objects are. And what's nice about that is it doesn't show all the clutter that might be in your room. It just grabs the most important things. There's a chair here. There's a this here. And what's nice about that is that it's a much lighter model, much easier to work with. And so I really think that Polycam still is the best app out there to do this with. And by the way, before we break, I did the best I could. Accurate pulling a.
There you go.
That's
too big a load.
Good.
Yeah,
It's a trailer, not a Winnebago technically, because Winnebago the engines in them, and usually the Winnebago pulls the
the Winnebago might not have been the most accurate thing.
It's a metaphor,
in my head.
Precision.
Yeah, exactly. But there you go. So anyway,
nicely done. Our thanks go out to everybody involved in this show. We do this every single day. We hope we were helpful to you. Those of you who ask questions and those of you who just enjoy listening to a discussion like this about tech matters, we are here to do that for you every single day, and we appreciate it. It only happens because of three constituencies: the producers, those of you who ask the questions into this show because you drive our agenda every single day, to the panelists who show up and freely give their time to help everybody else who's listening and watching. Huge thanks to the panelists. It is not a small thing to have all this intelligence show up every day to just freely answer every question from all comers. So thank you all panelists, and to our amazing back-end crew, the unsung heroes who you will see on the credit crawl at the end of this, who wake up and help everybody do everything. We see them when we come in as panelists every day. We've formed friendships and relationships with people, and it's really a privilege to be part of this unseen back-end crew that are just names here, but are real people who really are wonderful people and help this show become what it is every single day. Our Talak traversal for today, we've traveled 38,000 miles, that's 61,000 kilometers, 299 million bananas for scale. Thank you for watching. We'll be right back here tomorrow, same time, same place. Bye-bye.
it's so many. Wait, hold on. Let me see if I get this.
Oh, it's so good.
But some of them, but you gotta. I show you the normal one, but then there's like this, and then there's like I don't understand.
Oh, that's magic.
And then you're like,
with coherence.
what the what? You know, like
that
this
Acura
like,
only has forward
that's
gears,
a racing
no
Winnebago. That is
racing. There's like, nothing
wow.
like and then another one like this, and then
that's a
like,
Corvette. Like what?
And then like look at that. And then I don't know what that is. It's like if Acura made a Winnebago, that
they
would be it.
They took an Acura hood ornament and put it on the back.
And then you have this one's like a racing Acura with a trailer.
With a racing Winnebago. That is hilarious.
This one actually looks like it might actually work. You know, you get an Acura SUV. Look at this one. This one's like
whoa.
Yeah. It's like and then it splattered it. I don't know why. Thanks.
That's the road.